Amazing twist. Little girl, cast out by stepmother for $1 theft, discovers millionaire's life. Lily's small hands trembled as she held the crumpled dollar bill, the very reason for her misery. The warmth she intended to bring to her younger brother with a simple treat had turned into a cold, suffocating dread. Thief! Her stepmother snarled, her words heavier than any physical blow, lingering in the air like a curse. Lily felt abandoned, her heart lurching as she kicked at a stone on the cracked pavement, watching it skitter away as though it had more purpose than her life did now. Alone in a world that once felt tender, she turned her back on the empty house, fleeing into the dusty corners of their small town, her only refuge now the ancient library on Elm Street. Among cobwebbed shelves, a peculiar silence wrapped around her. This place held secrets, she could sense it. As she traversed aisles brimming with history, her fingers brushed against the rough spines of books that seemed to whisper their stories. Then she stumbled upon a cache of letters tucked behind a forgotten volume, a treasure hidden in plain sight. Each letter breathed life into the memory of a grandfather she never knew existed. A millionaire, cast aside by family, his love never realized. It wasn't riches she craved, but acceptance. A sense of belonging. A yearning for connection to fight the gnawing loneliness enclosing her like a storm cloud. She curled up on the library floor, the letters unfurling tales of ambition and betrayal that felt hauntingly familiar. Why wasn't I told? The question ricocheted in her mind, echoing against the weight of her stepmother's disdain. Light flickered from a dusty window, illuminating her face twisted in both wonder and fear. Could this family lineage offer her a lifeline, and escape from being the thief girl everyone whispered about back in town? But what if they were right? What if she was simply bad? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The words of the letters ignited a flicker of hope, yet the shadows of her reality loomed large. The town's scorn turned familiar faces into suffocating silhouettes, draining her light. Mr. Thompson, the elderly librarian, had seen potential in her. He recognized the spark that flickered uncertainly within. But could she extinguish the whispers of judgment? She hesitated, heart racing at the thought of presenting herself among those who had once been friends. A chill coursed through her veins, hitting closer than any biting winter air. The idea alone felt like an insurmountable mountain. As fear battled against determination, she faced a conundrum that twisted her stomach into knots. Would she dare to embrace her heritage and the unnamed legacy lurking in those letters? Or succumb to the stinging glares of denial rooted within her small community? Each article of her family history she unveiled deepened the dilemma, holding the potential for greatness cloaked in the ever-present dread of failure. The sand beneath her feet seemed to shift as she stood at a precipice, poised at a defining crossroads, a moment bloodied with anxiety, uncertainty swirling around her like autumn leaves caught in an unrelenting breeze. Could she pave a new path? The answer felt both thrilling and terrifying, entwined in a web of ambition and fear. Would she be courageous enough to confront the past, challenge her own worth, and pen a letter to a future unknown? For in Lily's heart, the final question echoed, drowning her in the weight of responsibility. Could she restore not only the family name but her own dignity? Or would she let the town decide her fate? Lily clutched the letters tightly to her chest, each one a whisper of courage, igniting a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. In the silence of the library, solitude transformed from a cage into a sanctuary. The letters demanded to be heard, carrying the weight of aspirations that transcended a mere bloodline. As she decoded her grandfather's dreams and failures, a thread of connection began to weave between their souls, unseen but palpable. Could her desperate hope be the catalyst for change? With pounding heart, she formulated a plan. The fear that had once paralyzed her morphed into a targeted glare against the judgment that awaited beyond the library's doors. If she could use her grandfather's story as a shield, she wouldn't just challenge the labels placed upon her. she'd ignite a fire that would refuse to be extinguished. Her first move was clear: research. She could almost hear Mr. Thompson's encouraging voice echoing in her mind, urging her to step beyond fear and into preparation. The dusty shelves, once so forbidding, transformed into her battleground. Books about self-made millionaires and the intricacies of overcoming failure lined the walls, waiting to impart their wisdom. She absorbed every detail, each page turning her apprehension into knowledge, fortifying her resolve with tales of grit and determination. Days passed, each spent lost in the library's embrace, shifting from timid glances at books to methodical note-taking. Conversations with Mr. Thompson became more frequent, each dialogue illuminating not just her own path but also the potential impact of her lineage. He shared stories of local heroes who had risen above their circumstances, dangling threads of inspiration that intertwined with her own emerging story. Yet, as she stepped into the town each day, the stares remained unyielding. Whispers of thief clung to her, crafting an invisible noose she struggled against. Resistance pooled within her, a familiar feeling mounted to the surface: anger. Who were they to dictate her identity? She wasn't accountable for her family's past nor the mishap that had painted her in colors of shame. When confronted at school, she faced her peers with newfound clarity. "I refuse to let anyone label my worth but me," she declared, voice steady but heart pounding. A delicate shift occurred. The remaining classmates absorbed her resolve, faces shifting from mockery to intrigue. Perhaps the weight of her stepmother's bitterness could be countered by an assertive reclamation of self. Each act of defiance chipped away at her internal fortress of doubt. As days transformed into weeks, she began assembling a presentation and amalgamation of her grandfather's journeys and her own evolution. With each detail she dissected, a deeper understanding bloomed. She was more than just a thief, she embodied the essence of persistence, a latent strength yearning for acknowledgement. The library's quiet confines evolved into a laboratory for growth, fostering determination that silenced the preceding echoes of failure. Just as she dared to dream of unveiling her project to an audience beyond the confines of the town, an opportunity to illuminate the narrative of resilience in contrast to her stepmother's judgment, an unexpected call came through the library's ancient phone line. Raw anxiety tightened her chest as she listened. "Miss Lily Parker? We have information about your grandfather's estate," the caller said. "You need to come to the office immediately." An icy chill and a rush of excitement flooded her veins. What did this mean for her future? Would this connection foster the acceptance she yearned for, or would it unravel her entirely? The shadow of doubt loomed larger than ever, threatening to pull her down into the depths of uncertainty. Would she seize this opportunity, stepping not only towards the legacy of a millionaire but also towards the ultimate confrontation with her past? Decisions dwelled in the air, thick with tension, as she hesitated at the threshold, the weight of potential hanging heavily on her shoulders. What awaited her on the other side? Lily stood at the threshold, heart racing as she processed the unexpected call. The weight of her grandfather's legacy loomed heavy in her mind. As she took a deep breath and stepped into the cold, formal office, a mixture of trepidation and determination surged within her. Every inch of the room, from its polished oak desk to the dusty legal tomes lining the shelves, felt foreign yet oddly enchanting, whispering tales of her grandfather's past. "Miss Parker, please have a seat," the lawyer said, his voice firm but warm. She perched on the edge of the chair, ready to dive into a future that could redefine not only her life but also challenge every narrative that had been written about her. "I have several documents here that will clarify the status of your grandfather's estate." With each paper he slid across the desk, she felt the atmosphere thicken, her pulse quickening in anticipation. There was mention of unforeseen assets, properties she never knew existed, and most notably an injunction against making them public until a designated heir was recognized. Could that heir truly be her? The thought startled her. The juxtaposition of heir and thief rang discordantly in her mind. Her confidence wavered momentarily, but then she steadied herself. This was her chance not just to reshape her future, but to reclaim her story. Each figure and title etched on the documents blurred as her mind raced with possibilities. Were these gifts of the past meant to transport her out of the shadows cast by her family's misdeeds? Or was it a test, one demanding that she face the very lineage she initially tried to escape? Miss Parker? The lawyer's voice brought her back into focus. Do you understand the implications of what you're inheriting? Lily nodded, her thoughts swirling. Clear implications held weight. New responsibilities weighed against her youthful ignorance. She could sense that every decision moving forward would not only influence her estate but resonate through her self-worth, and the way her peers would perceive her. This inheritance could either be her redemption or a shackle binding her to a past she was desperate to redefine. With resolve building within her, she focused on the lawyer's words about the estate's potential. We can facilitate your transition, but you should know the community will have its discussions. Many still think of you as part of your family's past. Yes, but I'm not, she blurted, surprising even herself with the strength in her voice. I intend to show them that I am more than what they think. I want to shape my identity through my actions through this estate, through the legacy I choose to create. The lawyer raised an eyebrow, impressed. That's quite ambitious. But know that ambition without a supporting strategy can lead to a fragile foundation. Do you have a plan? Plan? The word lingered in the air, morphing within her unruly mind. Lily saw the roles unfolding before her, not just as an heir but as an individual ready to challenge perceptions, to dismantle judgments, with every strategic step she took. She envisioned developing the estate into a community hub, a place that redefined wealth beyond mere assets, enriching lives instead of feeding the stigma of her past. But as she pondered her vision, a nagging thought crept in. Could this transformation truly heal her wounds? Would her stepmother's disdain echo louder through the community than her burgeoning success? Lily's heart pounded as the enormity of her decisions crystallized. She had a path forming before her, but the journey toward self-definition was fraught with treacherous emotions and external doubts. Facing review and critique continued to feel like a double-edged sword. Your thoughts are critical, the lawyer noted. You may want to consult with those who have navigated similar challenges. You may also want to rebuild bridges, even with family. The mention of her stepmother sent icy shards through her, yet beneath it lay a surge of rebellious fire. Facing her stepmother might be non-negotiable. It was the ultimate confrontation with an adversary that had fueled her defiance. Suddenly, the estate wasn't merely an inheritance. It represented her battleground, her proving ground, and the first step into a new chapter defined not by legacy but by her will. Could she confront everything that sought to undermine her evolution? As she left the office, her mind buzzed with emotions, confidence warring with doubt, hope clashing with fear. One thing was clear: the battle was only just beginning. And her next move could either secure her future or tear down the fragile beginnings she had built. With determination tightening her grip, she felt the next challenge materializing on her horizon. The moment had arrived to face not only her past but her stepmother's judgment. Would she have the courage to confront that formidable fear? Lily walked down the hallway, her mind a tumultuous swirl of strategy, fear, and urgency. As she stepped into the muted glow of the late afternoon sun, its warmth seeped into her skin, awakening a burgeoning ambition within her. The quiet hum of the street below contrasted with the fever of her thoughts, spinning in hundreds of directions. She had always been defined by others, her peers, her family, the community. Now, the chance was there to forge her own definition, but clarity seemed elusive. Engulfed in contemplation, she found herself at a cafe a few blocks from the office. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries felt like a comforting embrace as she settled into a corner table. With a notebook spread open before her, she gathered her thoughts, taking bold strokes with the pen as if each word could summon the future she envisioned. Focus, Lily, she whispered to herself, grounding her spiraling thoughts. First, there was the estate. It wouldn't transform overnight, and she knew success would demand diligence. The properties, though daunting, represented potential. Yet, where to begin? She flipped through her notebook, pages already filled with half-formed ideas. Community engagement was key, but tangible steps were necessary. As she considered her ambitions of repurposing the estate into a space of opportunity offering workshops, events, and safe gatherings, she hesitated at the thought of how to convey her vision to others. Engaging people who had once turned their backs on the Parkers would require significant bravery. Ignoring the nagging doubts, she penned out a potential outline of her first initiative. Perhaps a community garden? That could not only beautify the property but symbolize rebirth and collaboration, a fresh start for both her and the town's perception of her family. Just then, the weight of her stepmother's disdain struck her like a cold breeze. The memory of their last encounter, the sharp words, the dismissive gaze clouded her resolve. Her stepmother had always harnessed control over their family narratives, painting Lily as the rebellious outcast. But Lily's heart raced not out of fear, rather, it was the kindling of ember-like determination. She would rewrite those narratives. Information was power, and she would thrive upon it. Clouds gathered outside, casting shadows across her table. With every thunder rumble reverberating through the cafe, a notion brewed within her. She could seek out individuals who understood the community, who had traversed challenges and faced judgments. Perhaps they too carried stories of rebirth, tales of overcoming inherited burdens. Could she open dialogues that might help reshape her reputation? An idea struck her like lightning: interviews. She could learn, connect, and ultimately construct her narrative through these exchanges. Each conversation could reinforce her strategy and cement her role as a pioneer of change, not just an heir to a controversial legacy. Conviction surged through her veins. A detailed plan began forming, one step leading seamlessly into the next. By integrating her ambition with collective stories, she could create a vision grounded in reality. It was a chance to not just inherit a legacy, but to transform it into a legacy of her own making. After finishing her coffee, she gathered her belongings, the weight of her thoughts still present but now bearing a glimmering perspective. She felt ready to approach her stepmother, not in submission, but as an equal on this journey of reclamation and reconciliation. At that moment, the thunder cracked outside, the final call to action echoing her cumulative resolve. The confrontation loomed on the horizon, shadowed by the challenge she coveted. As she left the cafe, her stride felt purposeful, the city alive around her as if reflecting her newly ignited spirit. Bracing for the storm ahead both in the skies above and in her heart, she prepared herself for the ultimate encounter. The time had come to face her stepmother. Would she emerge victorious in this battle of wills, or would old shadows outweigh her newfound light? Lily stepped into her apartment, the door clicking shut behind her, sealing off the external chaos as a new kind of quiet enveloped her. The air felt dense with anticipation, but a fierce resolve emanated from her core. Her heart raced not with anxiety, but with an electric thrill. This was her moment to channel all the swirling dynamics cultivated over the years into a focused confrontation. She paced the room, the faint sound of raindrops beginning to splatter against the window. Each drop mirrored the uncertainty she felt. The prospect of facing her stepmother was daunting, an emotional wrestling match between the past and her burgeoning self. Her stepmother's voice echoed in her mind, a melodic yet biting rhythm filled with dismissal, a reminder of who Lily had been branded by those hurtful labels. "Rebellious outcast," she recited aloud, challenging the phrase that had often trapped her in a role she had long outgrown. But how could she dispel the narrative that had shaped her identity? The answer lay in the very initiative she had sketched out earlier. Engaging with the community through interviews, the voices of others could provide the validation her own story desperately needed. With her heart still pounding, she retrieved her notebook and began to brainstorm. Mapping out potential interviewees, she felt a rush of clarity. The baker 2 streets down who had seen generations pass through, the old florist with tales of mid-century gatherings, the retired teachers who knew more about the family's reputation than she did. Each name felt like a thread leading away from her family's shadows, weaving a new narrative tapestry. She envisioned herself sitting across from each of them, asking questions to learn and not just to fill the void left by her stepmother's harsh words. This wouldn't be about absolution, it would be about connection. Gathering perspectives would help her to tell her own story more expansively, standing among the community rather than apart from it. Suddenly, her mind flickered back to her stepmother, a woman of control, whose positional power was all-consuming. This thought chilled her resolve momentarily. How could someone who had wielded so much influence over her life be confronted in a way that her voice might finally be heard? With this in mind, Lily felt a wave of fear creeping back in, tempting her towards hesitation. Yet, she stilled that impulse. Deep within, she unearthed a flicker of self-belief. Every time doubts surfaced, she could trace their origins back to that authoritative figure. Resolving to challenge that authority, she clutched her pen with renewed determination, jotting down not just names, but questions that stirred within her a way to turn the probing gaze outward rather than inward. Each question would be an opportunity to reclaim a part of herself that had long been buried under layers of expectation. The rain intensified outside, creating a symphony that spurred her forward. It was time to act, to storm out into the world and begin this series of dialogues that would not just change the narrative around the Parkers but transform her own perception of belonging within that narrative. With a plan taking shape, Lily's adrenaline soared. Her new ambition wasn't just about property redevelopment. It was to develop herself. Each encounter would forge connections, and as she listened and learned, she would redefine who Lily Parker was. With impulse now transfused with intention, she felt freer than she had in years. The storm outside roared louder, echoing the turmoil of her impending interview with her stepmother. Was it also a sign, a prelude to the thunderous confrontation yet to unfold? Could her newfound direction infuse that meeting with a strength that would finally alter the dynamic? Her stomach knotted with the weight of anticipation, yet excitement pulsed through her as well. The others she sought to engage, their wisdom, stories, resilience would empower her on this journey. She resolved then and there that she would take back her narrative, and nothing would stop her. As she stood at the precipice of both conflict and opportunity, one question remained lit in her mind like a beacon. What would her stepmother say when confronted with an evolved Lily? In that moment, everything felt possible, but uncertainty loomed on the horizon, waiting to shape the outcome. Would she truly be ready for the next step, or was she still unprepared for the tempest that awaited? The sun broke through the clouds the following morning, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling in Lily's chest. As she stood by the window, watching sunlight dance on the raindrops clinging to the glass, she felt a sense of renewal. Today would mark the beginning of her transformation, a necessary leap into uncharted waters that promised both risk and reward. With her notebook open, she meticulously mapped a path for her upcoming interviews. The baker was first. His shop was a cradle of nostalgia, and Lily's fingers twitched with excitement at the thought of tapping into his wealth of history. She felt like an archaeologist, ready to unearth forgotten stories. Each section of the page transformed from a blank canvas into a vibrant picture of potential connections. But deeper thoughts unsettled her. What if the baker thought her ideas were naive? What if her stepmother's disdain echoed in their opinions too? The shadow of doubt threatened to obscure her newfound clarity, making her hesitations palpable. Gathering her resolve, she decided these acts of vulnerability were actually strengths. Every response she might receive would serve to fortify her narrative. If they saw her potential, she could finally reject the narrative her family had forced upon her. In the vibrant streets filled with chatter and life, her feet carried her to the bakery, where the aroma of fresh bread enveloped her like a warm hug. She pushed the door open, and a small bell chimed above her, punctuating the busy atmosphere. As she approached the counter, the baker, Mr. Allen, glanced up and flashed a handsome smile, his brown apron dusted with flour. "Lily Parker! Bit of a grown-up since the last time we spoke, eh?" he boomed, recognition sparkling in his eyes. She smiled tentatively, realizing the power of inquisition lay in the connection. "Mr. Allen, do you remember those school fundraisers we used to hold? Well, I'm writing something, and I would love to hear your stories. The good, the bad, everything." The baker chuckled softly, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Stories are like bread, my dear. Knead them just right, and they rise." They spent nearly an hour weeding through memories and laughs. He spoke of the families who had walked through his doors, the exchanges that left marks on his heart. Each shared moment added layers to her understanding of life outside her family, where acceptance didn't always come at the price of perfection. As she scribbled down notes, the echoes of her stepmother's dismissive comments faded. Here, Lily recast herself not as an outcast but as a vibrant seam in the fabric of her community. Revitalized, she bid Mr. Allen goodbye, exchanging promises to return for more tales soon. The swagger in her walk as she left the bakery felt foreign but exhilarating. She envisioned her next encounter with the florist, an elderly woman with a penchant for nurturing both plants and spirits. Her heartbeat quickened at the thought each interaction was a stepping stone toward reclaiming the story of Lily Parker. However, the deeper she dove into her project, the gnawing anticipation of her confrontation loomed larger. Each interview would bolster her spirit, but the thought of facing her stepmother descended like a storm cloud that she couldn't initially dispel. It was unsettling to realize that her growth would actually bring her closer to that inevitable showdown. As the day progressed, practicality melted into introspection. Was she constructing a new identity, or simply building a facade that would inevitably crumble under scrutiny? Would her stepmother even notice the difference? That night, back in her apartment, Lily plowed through her growing collection of stories. The voices she had gathered began to resonate with strength, whispering affirmations of her worth. She jotted down a note in bold letters: "I am more than what you think of me." The rain began again, a soft patter against the window, but this time, instead of signaling fear, it felt like a cleansing ritual. She couldn't ignore the looming confrontation any longer. It was a necessary prelude, and she would not cower. "I will claim my story," she whispered to her reflection, an incantation against the doubts that still flickered in her mind. The next day, armed with courage and purpose, she planned to meet the florist. But as she turned the last page of her notebook, she stumbled upon a tiny scrap of paper that slipped from the folds. It was a handwritten note from her stepmother, slipped under her door weeks ago, an attempt at reconciliation. Reading the words felt like unearthing a buried treasure, but it also ignited a new fear, a pang of curiosity about the letter's intentions. What potential confrontations lay in store? Would this note shift her course or reinforce her determination? The question gripped her like a vice, teasing the edge of her resolve. It was time to face the silence left by that letter. It was time to confront not just her stepmother but herself. The sun had barely begun to rise, yet Lily felt the weight of the day ahead pressing against her. That familiar sense of anxiety clung like a damp cloth, a reminder of her complicated relationship with her stepmother. As she prepared for her visit to the florist, she fought against the tide of uncertainty. The note rested heavily in her pocket, each crinkle a reminder of the past, of conversations strained with misplaced expectations. Entering the flower shop was like stepping into a different world. The vibrant colors almost felt surreal, contrasting sharply with the shadows of doubt that lingered in her mind. The sweet, floral scents filled the air, and Lily took a moment to breathe deeply, allowing herself to be enveloped in this serene atmosphere. Mrs. Bellingham was busy arranging bouquets, her calloused hands skillfully manipulating the flowers into something beautiful. She glanced up, a spark of recognition igniting her warm smile. "Lily, you've grown into a lovely young woman. What brings you here today?" "Hello, Mrs. Bellingham. I want to talk about your stories. I believe every flower has a tale to tell, and I'm hoping you'll share some with me." The florist's eyes twinkled with excitement. "Stories, my dear?" "Yes, indeed. Flowers are witnesses to so many moments: weddings, heartaches, new beginnings." As they delved into conversation, Lily found herself enthralled. Each tale Mrs. Bellingham wove was a delicate thread that formed the fabric of her life experiences. There were stories of love blossoming amid adversity, and the triumph of resurrection in moments of sadness, much like the petals that would rise after a long winter. With every anecdote, Lily's confidence grew. The contrast between the florist's kindness and the coldness she'd endured in her own home became stark. Didn't she deserve to feel cherished too? The stories were embers igniting a fire of resilience within her heart. She realized that the essence of who she was and who she could become lay interwoven within these narratives. However, the specter of her stepmother lingered just beyond the warmth of the shop. Each affirmation of worth Lillian received felt undercut by the thought of their impending confrontation. Mrs. Bellingham's laughter was the laughter of a different kind of family, a family forged through choice rather than obligation. I must confess, Mrs. Bellingham said, leaning closer, almost conspiratorially, life can throw us curves, but it is how we respond that defines us. It seems you are on a quest for your own truth. Lily hesitated, considering the depth of that statement. She felt a longing to share the truth of her situation, to explain the fractured relationship that defined her childhood. But allowing vulnerability felt risky. What if Mrs. Bellingham dismissed her struggles, much like her stepmother had done? Yet, somewhere deep within, Lily could feel a shift. I'm trying to reclaim my story, she finally confessed, her voice steadying. I want to uncover my own truth without the weight of others' expectations. In that moment, Mrs. Bellingham's eyes softened with understanding. That is the first step, dear. Just remember, every story has its battles. It's about how we lean into them that creates us anew. A smile broke through Lily's anxiety. Mrs. Bellingham's words resonated deep inside her, affirming what she'd begun to gather from her interviews. Each story was infused with resilience, and haunted by pain, their complexities a mirror reflecting her own. When their time together came to an end, and Lily prepared to leave, she felt an unexpected pang of sorrow. Thank you for sharing your stories. They mean more than you know. Remember, Mrs. Bellingham called upon her departure, your story is a garden, nurture it, and it will blossom in ways you never expect. With the floral scents clinging to her clothes, Lily stepped back into the bustling street, her notebook heavier with new insights. A determination rose within her. She was not simply the girl shaped by her stepmother's scorn. She was filled with histories, potentials, and a burgeoning identity that deserved to be told. Yet the note's presence in her pocket was relentless, a reminder of doubts just waiting to surface. Was she ready for the confrontation it signified? Each step toward home felt like a step toward the inevitable clash, a test of everything she had begun to forge. How would she confront her past without fear? Questions swirled in her mind as she approached her door. She hesitated, staring at the note like it held the key to her future. Was she truly prepared to face her stepmother, to reclaim her story? The next moment would decide whether she would burst through the silence of their relationship, or retreat once more. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Lily stepped inside her home, the familiar scent of antiseptic and the muted shades of her surroundings crashing against the vibrant memories of the flower shop. The door closed behind her with a soft click, sealing her back into the reality she'd often tried to escape. The weight of the note in her pocket was more present now than ever, a persistent reminder of the confrontation looming ahead. She stood at the threshold of the living room, where her stepmother busied herself with yet another round of scrutinizing household chores. The frail buzz of ongoing distractions only amplified the tension coiling in her stomach. Lily questioned whether she even belonged here, where every glance from her stepmother felt like an accusation and each silence weighed heavy with unsaid words. Taking a step forward, she felt an unfamiliar resolve pooling inside her. I need to talk to you, she stated, trying her best to mask the tremor in her voice. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, time stood still. Her stepmother looked up, her expression devoid of warmth. Talk about what? The nonchalant tone stung, but Lily kept her stance firm. It's about my life. About what I want. Hearing the words vocalized externalized the internal struggles she'd nurtured for far too long. This was her moment to stand, to reclaim her narrative from the suffocating expectations that stifled her. I've seen you hanging around that flower shop again, her stepmother replied dismissively, her eyes narrowing. You get lost in those stories while ignoring your responsibilities here. You think dreaming will make your life better? Each point of criticism felt like a jab, yet they also ignited something deeper within her. It's not just dreaming. It's about discovering who I am, about learning from stories that aren't mine alone. Lily struggled to maintain her composure, but an undercurrent of anger began to surface. You always told me I was nothing without you, but you never asked me what I wanted, what I needed. The implications of her own words rattled Lily. Her heart raced, and she feared her stepmother's reaction, a potentially devastating return to the past she'd been desperate to escape. Silence stretched between them, fraught with a tension that could erupt at any moment. Finally, Her stepmother scoffed. You think you can just pick and choose what matters? Life isn't that simple. But it should be. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her pulse quickened, but with it came a rush of adrenaline, a feeling of empowerment she had rarely encountered before. Lily's boldness shocked her. This wasn't just about flowers and fairy tales, it was about self-assertion. I am more than what you've made me, she declared, her voice steadying as she faced this long-standing adversary. I have my own dreams, my own story to write. Her stepmother's eyes darkened, a storm brewing behind them. How dare you, she began to retort, but Lily's conviction blazed through the air like wildfire, silencing her. I dare because I'm tired of feeling small, Lily interrupted, her heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. There was a relief in letting the truth flood out, in no longer being shackled by fear of dismissal. Mrs. Bellingham's words echoed in her mind. This was her story, her garden to nurture, and there were no weeds that could choke it unless she allowed them to grow. I won't let you define me anymore, she finished, her chest heaving. The emotions, both raw and unrefined, bore the weight of years of silence, yet here they were, refusing to be muted any longer. The tension intensified, and the room's atmosphere shifted palpably, thickening as if charged with unspoken energies. Lily braced for the impending explosion, for now, she understood that every confrontation carried the risk of intimacy or greater estrangement. As her stepmother processed this sudden outburst, Lily's heart thudded loudly in her chest. She had taken the first step toward reclaiming her authority, but the confrontation was far from over. What would her stepmother's next move be? Would she relinquish control over Lily's narrative, or would she tighten her grip in the name of maintaining order? With questions hanging in the air, a mix of fear and anticipation coursed through Lily. Would this moment herald the beginning of her own empowered story, or would it spiral into a battle of wills from which she couldn't emerge unscathed? Now, standing on the precipice, she prepared for whatever might come next, knowing her journey was only beginning. The silence shattered as her stepmother responded, coolly gathering herself before unleashing her counterattack. You think you can speak to me that way without repercussions? This isn't a fairy tale, Lily. You're not going to get what you want just because you throw a tantrum. Lily's mind raced. She could feel the old familiar dread creeping in, but with it came the fire of her recent resolve. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm asserting my independence. I'm tired of being treated like a child. The weight of her stepmother's gaze pressed against her, and she felt small again, a child in the shadow of disapproval. But that didn't mean she had to give in. In that moment, Lily understood the person she had become in the flower shop was worth standing up for, even if her stepmother couldn't see it. I've been trapped in your expectations for too long, Lily said, her voice gaining strength. I've let you define me, but today I choose to define myself. Her stepmother blinked, shock briefly flickering across her expression, but it was quickly replaced by irritation. You think life is about what you want? You'll see. The real world is waiting for you, and it won't be kind. The challenge sparked something fierce within Lily. It wasn't the fears of the past wrapping around her heart anymore. Instead, she felt the cool clarity of ambition rising. Let it come, she replied defiantly. I'm not afraid anymore. Behind her resolve, self-doubt shadowed her thoughts. Could she really withstand the storm her stepmother might unleash? The idea of failing frightened her more than anything, clinging to her like a weight in water. Yet beneath that fear lay the promise of growth, uncovered treasures reflected in her vision of the future, a life brimming with potential. Lily turned and paced the sterile room, feeling fierce energy coursing through her veins. The flower shop had been her sanctuary, an escape where she could nurture not just blooms but her abilities and passions. Ideas began to swell. How could she merge her newly discovered identity with her deep-seated desire for independence? Suddenly, she remembered Mrs. Bellingham's recent words, "If you want a garden, you must first prepare the soil." The metaphor resonated with her. She needed to prepare her own soil at home, setting healthy boundaries and allowing both her dreams and her self-worth to take root. Maybe, Lily said slowly, turning back to her stepmother, what you really fear is the unknown. You cling to control because of that fear. Her stepmother's expression shifted momentarily, anger flaring before she clamped down again. Enough of this nonsense. You have responsibilities to fulfill. Maybe I don't believe in your responsibilities anymore, Lily said, her voice firm but edged with trepidation. I'm learning to create my own. A tangible tension built in the air, slicing through Lily's remaining uncertainties like glass. She was aware of the danger in dismantling the edifice her stepmother had constructed around them, yet it was clear she would have to push through that wall to truly understand herself. What would happen if she kept pushing? Would her stepmother dig in her heels and try to drag her back, or would she relent and give Lily space to flourish? As the grips of stubbornness laced through the silence, Lily could feel the confrontation drawing closer to a critical moment. She was prepared to fight for her autonomy, but fighting meant risking everything. The doubts wound like twine around her thoughts. What if I'm not strong enough? Whispered a voice from deep within. Yet that same fire, the belief in her own story, began to counter the dark shadow of doubt. If success and prosperity lay beyond this exchange, the question remained, how much was she willing to sacrifice to achieve it, and what would she need to confront herself outside the flower shop? The subtle tremors of uncertainty surged within her. With her heart racing, Lily stared resolutely into her stepmother's eyes. This was about more than just words, it was about the essence of who she was becoming. Would it mark the beginning of an identity she could embrace, or was it merely the end of what she had always known? Fear coiled within her, but in the pit of her stomach, another feeling bloomed, a fierce determination that she had never felt before. I'm ready to face whatever this is, she whispered to herself, even as the air thickened with tension. But as she prepared herself for the push and pull of the new life unfolding before her, she couldn't shake the sense that this was just the prologue to a much grander story about to be written. What awaited her in the world outside this house, and would she ultimately find the strength to venture into it? Lily's heart raced as she stood, firm and resolute, facing the intricate web of emotions that enveloped her impending confrontation with her stepmother. The chaos within her felt relentless, yet she was determined to redefine her narrative and reclaim her identity. The silence stretched on as her stepmother's expression hardened. You think this is just about you? Your little dreams? You have responsibilities, obligations, she began, each word laced with venom. But Lily interrupted, her voice unwavering. I refuse to wear the labels you've affixed to me. I am not just the thief girl anymore. You taught me the sharpness of judgment, but I am also learning the power of resilience. As the weight of those words hung in the air, something within Lily shifted. The confidence she had nurtured through her interviews, her studies, and her connections in the community surged within her, a river ready to flood the arid landscape of her stepmother's disapproval. Mr. Allen reminded me that stories can rise from the ashes of shame, Lily continued, each syllable infused with conviction. I am ready to create new narratives, not just for myself, but for the legacy that I've inherited. My grandfather's dreams, which once felt like an unrelated burden, have now become my motivation. I will honor his memory, not by hiding but by flourishing. Lily caught a flicker of uncertainty in her stepmother's eyes, and with that she pressed on. I've spent too long second-guessing my worth and living in the shadows of your judgments. But that ends today. I want to transform the estate into a community hub, a place for growth and connection, not just for me, but for everyone who needs a second chance. A chance to tell their stories. Her stepmother scoffed, crossing her arms tightly against her chest, but the hardness in her gaze softened slightly. You think you can just recreate your life based on dreams without the foundation of responsibility? What do you know about running such things? Lily felt the tremors of doubt clawing at her resolve, but rather than succumbing, she stood taller. I know how to listen, how to connect, and how to engage with the community. And I want to welcome everyone in, even you. The last words hung in the air, imbued with a surprising vulnerability. She offered a glimpse of inclusivity, recognizing her stepmother as part of her past, yet unyielding in her newfound direction. This wasn't just about their toxic relationship. It was also about rallying around the possibilities that stretched before them. In that moment, Lily felt her heart thump with profound satisfaction. She had gathered the strength to confront the shadows of her upbringing, confronting not only her stepmother but also her own self-doubt. Everything she had worked for hours spent poring over books, conversations with community figures, restoring her name had led to this. "How dare you?" her stepmother retorted, frustration bubbling over, but Lily caught a flicker of fear behind her eyes. The realization set in her stepmother was grappling with losing control over more than just Lily. Perhaps, a part of her felt threatened by the idea of being challenged, that her authority could be dismantled by a girl once deemed powerless. As they stood facing one another, a swell of acceptance burst within Lily. This was the tipping point she needed. "You can either choose to support me on this journey or let me go. I will not back down." For the first time, Lily felt the armor of her resolve solidify. She wasn't the girl who had fled her home in shame, nor was she merely an heir defined by her grandfather's past. She had carved a path to agency, imbued with ambition and a hunger for acceptance. Finally, after a moment that stretched into eternity, her stepmother exhaled slowly, the fight slipping from her features. "Maybe you are right about change, but I don't know if I can support you." "Then allow me the room to fly, even if you're afraid," Lily urged softly. "This is a chance for both of us to redefine our stories. To carve out spaces for ourselves beyond the shadows." As tension cracked like a lightning bolt around them, Lily's heart surged. In acknowledging her stepmother's fear, she created an unexpected opening for understanding. For once, they weren't merely adversaries. They were two individuals, struggling to navigate their entwined history. With an intense focus, Lily turned to leave the graying shadows of the past behind, her stride bolstered by the strength of her dreams. Reclaiming her narrative meant stepping outside of what other people believed and embracing the untapped potential waiting just beyond those doors. Days turned to weeks. Armed with the power of her grandfather's letters catalyzing her transformation and the community connections she forged, Lily embarked on her mission with dazzling ambition. The estate was actively evolving into a vibrant center of dynamism. Workshops, learning activities, and storytelling evenings took shape among its corridors, fostering unity within neighborhoods previously estranged from her family's name. Soon, there came a day when she sat before a gathering of community members, a presentation proudly displayed behind her, her stepmother seated among them, eyes locked onto her daughter with an intensity that spoke of reluctant admiration. As the event unfolded, Lily shared her own story intertwined with her grandfather's legacy. In that moment she stood tall, surrounded by others eager to participate and share their experiences. It was transcendent. And then it hit her, she had accomplished what she set out to do. She reclaimed her identity, reshaped public perception, and created a network that resonated far beyond her own needs. She had gone from a misplaced sense of shame to a recognized leader inspiring change. But more than that, she reveled in how far they had both traveled from confronting each other in manic anger to occupying a space where healing could take place. They could redefine their relationships on their terms. In the distance, she heard her name called in excitement by a child who had just attended one of her workshops. At that moment, Lily felt a pang of pure joy race through her chest. This was her park of fulfillment, her garden in bloom, and she was grateful to rise above the fractures of her past. With each step on her journey, she carried hope, evolution, and the courage of a girl who was no longer seeking to hide but to shine. And she planned on shining brightly, for all to see. Her eyes locked onto her stepmother, an understanding passing unspoken between them. This future would undoubtedly come with challenges, but now finally Lily Parker was prepared. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.